In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know in order to start learning Japanese today. It's based on my experience studying Japanese for the past 10 years and how I would have done it if I would have to start all over again today. First, I'll talk a little bit about the mindset that I think is necessary in order to set yourself up for success. In a day and age of instant gratification, learning a language might be one of the hardest things you'll ever try, and I believe in order to set yourself up for success, it's important you realize what you're starting with and set your expectations straight from the get-go. Before I jump into the bad news, first some good news. I'm confident that anybody can learn Japanese if they set their mind to it. It's not a matter of intellect, you don't have to be smart, and if there's such a thing as talent for language learning, I sure as hell don't have it, so if I can do it, I'm pretty sure you can do it too. The bad news though, it's an endless process and you will never be done. Learning Japanese, or any other language for that matter, is like running a marathon where the finish moves away from you the further you run. So if you really want to learn, you have to accept the fact that you will be studying for the rest of your life. Sure, there are points along the road where you get a sense of accomplishment, but, and I know how cliche this might sound, you have to find a way to enjoy the process. This brings me to my final word of advice before we actually jump into how to study. Make this the last video you watch on how to study Japanese. The thing is, the only hard part is putting in the consistent effort. The actual studying is not complicated at all. Believe me though when I've say I've been there, reading articles, joining Reddit discussions, watching countless videos, all to find shortcuts or that quickest method to become fluent in Japanese. However, the ironic thing is that the only shortcut there is by exactly not doing any of those things. Japanese, like every other language, consists of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And I think it's good to mention that even though there's obvious overlap between the four, these are four different skills that need targeted practice in order to get better at them. However, before you dive into practicing these skills, it's beneficial to first focus on building a foundation, with which I mean get a decent vocabulary, get the grammar down, and in Japanese case, learning Hiragana and Katakana. After reading one of the articles in the description about the Japanese writing system, start by learning how to read and write Hiragana and Katakana. What I did is, if you look up Hiragana and Katakana, you'll find that they are often displayed in two different tables. I made flashcards for both tables, going row by row, and then making sure that I practiced reading as well as writing, meaning that you do Japanese first and the Roman alphabet first. Even though most people will probably never have to write Japanese on paper, I think that practicing writing really helps memorizing the characters better. A quick tip for better handwriting, make sure you also look up the stroke order and follow those when you practice. So once you can at least read Hiragana and Katakana without too much effort, it's time to start on grammar. A quick heads up before you start, grammar is probably going to pose the largest threat on your motivation. In my experience, the process will feel very slow and unrewarding. I unfortunately don't have a golden tip to fix this, but I figured knowing beforehand that it's probably gonna suck might help you set the right expectations. So the first thing you have to do is find a grammar source that is split up into chapters in a logical order. This main source you pick will function as your roadmap. Two free grammar sources that I like a lot are Kim's Guide to Japanese Grammar and a website called Imabi. So I suggest you just pick one of those. They're excellent sources, and like I said, they're mainly there to function as your roadmap. Next to these websites, there's obviously books like Genki. However, these are split up into different volumes and can be annoying to get depending on how resourceful you are or where you live. So for pragmatic reasons, I would not choose these as my main grammar source. There are more than enough grammar sources out there, so while you stick with your main source as a roadmap, just refer to as many other grammar resources that you need in order to really understand every grammar point. So with your grammar source / roadmap now bookmarked in your browser, it's time to start studying grammar. Studying grammar comes with two pitfalls, however. The first one is going too fast, and the second one is approaching it like studying for a history exam, where you kind of just read the chapters over and over and make summaries. To study grammar effectively, you actually kind of want to approach it like studying for a math exam, where you actually put pen to paper and practice. What I found the most fun and helpful was actually translating sentences with the grammar point of that chapter and previous chapters. Kim's Guide to Japanese Grammar exercises are basically this, so I recommend those. But you can also, of course, make your own sentences. As long as this is doable on my side, I'm happy to check them out and help where necessary in my Discord. Sorry for the quick pause here. You're of course still very welcome to join my Discord, but a couple of days ago, I found out ChatGPT is an amazing tool for studying Japanese. I want to make a more in-depth video about ways to use ChatGPT for studying Japanese, but besides just regular Q&A, you can ask it to give you sentences with a specific grammar point to translate, and it can even check your translated sentences afterwards. I highly recommend you give it a go. In order to not go too fast, I recommend doing one new chapter at a time, and then before introducing a new chapter, go over the previous chapters you've already covered. Again, I love to help everyone serious about studying, so make sure you join my Discord and add me there with your questions. Next up, vocab/kanji. Notice that I say slash here and not and that's because I think studying vocabulary and kanji separately using the Heisig mnemonic system or some shit like that is a waste of time, and I will die on that hill. That being said though, I don't think it's wise to start studying vocabulary without any prior knowledge about kanji, so just in case. 1. Japanese words are most often written with one or multiple kanji. 2. One kanji can most often be read or pronounced in multiple ways. These ways of reading/pronouncing are grouped into 2 categories, which are called the kun and the on readings. A kanji can have multiple of each. The kun reading is an actual Japanese word and makes sense on its own. The on reading is used when multiple kanji are combined together to form a new word. The on reading by itself most often doesn't mean anything. A kanji most often consists of multiple parts. One is the radical, which kind of signifies the category of a kanji and kind of tells something about its meaning. And then a part that signifies the on reading and most often has nothing to do with the meaning of the kanji at all. And then finally, there are countless of exceptions to what I just said, all the more reason to study vocabulary and kanji together. Alright, so how to go about actually studying vocab then? Studying vocabulary literally comes down to doing drills consistently every day. Nothing more, nothing less. The best way I have found is by using Anki, which is an extremely powerful, probably the most popular used flashcard software out there. Download it on all your devices so you have a copy of your flashcards wherever you go. The iOS version will set you back about $20, but considering you'll be using it for the rest of your life, it's probably a worthy investment. On the Anki website, you can find decks that are shared and made by others, but I strongly advise you to make your own. Making cards yourself will force you to come up with a good translation for the Japanese words in your own language. That is specifically important for people like me, of whom English is not the native language and kind of tend to overestimate their English abilities. Plus, I find that the process of making cards, looking up the kanji of which a word consists, writing those out a couple of times, really helps me with eventually remembering the word and the kanji better. My vocabulary deck is my baby, and seeing it grow over time is really satisfying and really adds to the fun of studying. What the fuck? The way I currently build my deck is I save the words that I look up in a dictionary, and then once every week I make cards of those words. I often stream this process on Twitch, so if that sounds like fun to have up on your second monitor, make sure to come by. You can also obviously ask me questions about Japanese there. After throwing around my deck too many times, I've settled on the following setup. It is 5 fields and creates a normal and reversed card for every word/phrase that I add. As powerful as Anki is though, I think everyone who has used it before will agree with me that the UX and UI is complete dog water. So to make it easy for you, I've made a quick guide how to set up your Anki deck like mine. Link is in the description. And as for which words to learn, my simple answer here is literally every word you encounter that you don't know yet. In the beginning, this will probably be the words in your grammar source, but if your vocab studying speed is quicker than your grammar source is introducing new words, you can also use the Kanshudo lists that I find pretty good. You can also opt for using the word list from the Japanese Language Proficiency Test or JLPT, starting from N5, working your way upwards. Links for these in the description. However, don't feel like you have to limit yourself to words that are introduced by a study source. You're only going to last as long as you're able to keep studying enjoyable, so just add whatever words you think are fun to remember that you pick up watching anime or listening to a song or whatever. When it comes to the speed of studying, Anki allows you to set the amount of new cards and reviews that you want to do every day. The only good amount here is the amount that you can stick to doing every day. So play around with the numbers a bit until you find the sweet spot. In my experience though, anything longer than 30 minutes is probably going to be overkill. As for the actual studying with Anki, really simple. Start by opening up your deck, obviously, and then assuming you have it set up like mine, where you have Japanese first cards and cards with your native language first. What you do is, for the Japanese first cards, you only count it right, obviously, if you know what the word means in your own language, but also if you know how to read the kanji. And then for the other cards, where your native language is on top, so you only count those correct if you know how to pronounce the word correctly with the right pitch accent and can write the kanji. This way you practice writing and reading kanji, study vocabulary, and also learn how to correctly pronounce them using the right pitch accent, which is what I want to go over next. NANI? Pitch accent unfortunately never really gets addressed, and I was first made aware of it after about 7 years of studying. The reason for this is probably that it's not that important to make yourself understandable in Japanese, but I think you'll agree with me that if I talk like this the whole time, it sounds super weird, and if you don't want to sound like that in Japanese, studying pitch accent is a must. I can't stress this enough, but it is by far the one thing I wish I was made aware of from day one. The go-to and probably only really accessible source about pitch accent is made by a content creator called Dogen. Use his content to familiarize yourself with the subject, after which you can study vocabulary together with pitch accent, hence the field for it on your Anki card. Pitch accent is probably for the same reason almost never really signified in the more popular English-Japanese dictionaries. This means that the right pitch accent for a word is kind of annoying to find sometimes. However, the Kanji lists that I mentioned earlier do signify the pitch accent for their words. Additionally, there's this website as well that has the most common words listed. So with those together, you're probably good for a while. But if there's words that you can't find, let me know in Discord and I'll look them up in my dictionary. So like I said in the beginning, I think we've been talking about for the past, I think it's best to mainly focus on that initial foundation before focusing on practicing reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I make it sound as two very distinct separate steps, but I'm sure you will also be frequently trying your hand at reading a news article or maybe watching anime with Japanese subtitles to see how you're doing so far. Doing so, you'll notice for yourself the point at which 99% of the time, the grammar is not really the problem anymore, but it's just not knowing enough words. It's once you get to this point that it's time to consider substituting some of the time you spend on grammar on practicing one of the skills you want to get better at, until shifting completely to doing that after you finish your grammar source. Another way to look at these two stages is the first part is the beginner stage, and then the stage you're getting into now is the intermediate stage. I'm really hesitant to talk about how long you should expect it to take yourself to go from beginner to intermediate, since it should not matter and is very different for everyone. However, I also recognize that you probably, just like I did, eventually want an answer and are going to look for one anyway. So for the sake of helping you set realistic expectations, I'll go ahead and rip off the band-aid and tell you that you have to expect to be in the beginner stage for at least a year. But once you get to this phase and are kind of done with the linear part of studying Japanese, you're now in the free roam part and can kind of work on your skill tree in a way that you see fit and have the means to. If your goal is to read Japanese books, go read Japanese books. If you want to watch anime without subtitles, go watch anime without subtitles. Look up every word you don't know in the process and make a card for them in your Anki deck, as you have been doing for about a year up until this point. There's really nothing more to it and is exactly what I'm still doing 10 years in. But Jimmy, what about speaking and writing? Assuming you're also consistently building your Anki deck with new words and doing your vocabulary drills every day, the only thing that's going to make you better at speaking Japanese is to actually speak Japanese. The same goes for writing. The obvious problem here though is that speaking and writing are hard to practice without a native speaker to check your writing or to speak with. The only real advice that I can give you here is that you have to get creative. I was able to create opportunities for myself that allow me to study in Japan and eventually work there. But when I didn't live in Japan, I worked at a Japanese restaurant and found people online to chat with. Maybe there's a Japanese community center or Japanese school in your area that you can get involved with. Maybe you can find someone to do language exchange with in your area or online. Again, the only real advice that I have here is be creative, but remember that where there's a will, there's a way. I've rewritten the script for this video a dozen times, and this is my 4th time recording it, and I think I can finally say with confidence that this is all you really need to know in order to start learning Japanese today. Again, you will never be done with studying, and it will take what feels like an eternity before you have the idea you're somewhat proficient at all. This sucks to think about, and it will be very hard at first, but once you embrace it and throw away all your expectations, you'll notice it'll become fun to study and learn that even you, who has never stuck with something for longer than a month, is able to achieve things if you set your mind to it. Again, if you have any questions or whatever, feel free to join my Discord and make sure to stop by my stream on Twitch as well.